Hi, welcome to the Red Booth Show. On tonight's episode, I have the amazing author, Orson Scott Card. So come and join us. So hello, Orson.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. This is amazing.
Well, I love the fact that this show even exists. I just wish I lived in LA where I could be part of the news events that you cover.
Well, anytime you're in LA, just let me know and we'll fit you in. You can come by anytime.
That sounds great to me.
Well, I know that you have been doing writing since you were very young, and I started to sort of look into your history and how you got into writing. What I understand is that it started with you basically doing adaptations for plays. Is that correct?
Yes. I became a theater major in order to act and mostly direct, and I still direct. But since you can lose money with a hit play, everyone knows that. So it's really not a career choice to go into acting and directing plays. And so I began to doctor some of the plays. I remember we were doing a production at the University of Flowers for Algernon, and I knew and loved the book. And the second act of the play was terrible. It was just bad. And so I asked the director, can I make a pass at writing a new second act? And he said, sure. And so I wrote a second act, and that's the one that we performed, completely breaking the contract, but statute of limitations, so I'm not worried about it. And my second act worked way better than theirs would have. So I thought, I can do this. But I realized what I'd done was I had done it with someone else's story. As soon as I started trying to come up with my own stories, it becomes hard to invent a story that's good. Flowers for Algernon was a tried, tested, proven story. But I also did a Reader's Theater production, and Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon, which played way better than the movie. We had standing room only, standing ovation, audience weeping. It was the best thing I've ever written, actually. But Marjorie Kellogg wrote that novel, not me. So she provided this great story, and all I did was find a way to work it onto the stage and allow the actors to present it. So adapting was great. Mm-hmm. But go ahead, ask.
I was going to say, how did you learn how to do the adaptation? Did you just sort of go for it, or did somebody...
I didn't learn how. I just looked at the book and saw what works in the book, and then put it into scenes. There are a couple of things that came naturally and easily to me as a writer: dialogue and scenes, the stuff that plays are made of. And so playwriting, except for story invention, was a no-brainer. So I didn't think of it as a career. It wasn't anything I was doing for money. I was doing it so the show would be good. And even now, this is going to sound really arrogant, but what the heck. I adapt Shakespeare for the stage. And what I do is I try to, John McWhorter, a really wonderful linguist, has complained about this. He said, the only people who never get to hear Shakespeare's language in their native language, Shakespeare's plays in their native language, are English-speaking people. Because we all have to hear it in 16th century, 17th century English, which is radically different from the English we speak now.
Right.
And so you'll be listening to a Shakespeare play. Well, usually now, when you watch a Shakespeare play, they go way overboard trying to make things funny, using physical comedy in a way that is really against the spirit of Shakespeare. His comedy, the best of it is wordplay. The trouble is, none of his puns work because you have to know both meanings of the word. And if one of them's gone, you have no idea what the joke was. So the wooing scene, for example, in Taming of the Shrew, deadly dull. And the Zeffirelli Taming of the Shrew with Burton and Taylor, boring. It goes on forever. It's like, well, I don't want to start naming bad movies, but it was a bad movie. And it was a bad scene because none of the jokes survived. So they replaced it all with repulsive physical comedy, and it made everybody too mean. And you didn't understand how they could fall in love. Well, in the script, Petruchio is making a bunch of really bad jokes, and Kate is making fun of him mercilessly. And the jokes are filthy, but nobody gets them now.
So you adapt it.
So what I do is I don't make it modern English.
Okay.
I have performed these in front of Shakespeare scholars, and they can't tell when Shakespeare leaves off and my stuff begins. I write it in the same level of English, so that it's, iambic pentameter, it flows, it sounds just like it's supposed to, except that I replace the jokes that don't work with jokes that do, where a modern audience can hear it instantly.
How can people see these plays of yours?
Well, I put them up online. They can put them on if they want to. I mean, I'm not going to collect royalties on my version of Shakespeare's plays. That would be ridiculous.
So you have the...
It's there for people to use.
Okay.
But people will, some directors, I can't use something impure. I'm going to use the pure Shakespeare, but then they cut it to ribbons. And I think, why not do the full Shakespeare play, but with the jokes replaced, and things made intelligible to a modern audience. I do remove all of the classical references that make no sense to, references to obscure Greek and Roman gods. Who cares? No modern audience will know what is being said. And so there are a few things like that I remove. But why not do the whole play? It's funnier that way. Shakespeare was wonderful. We've just lost a lot of his wit because our language changed. We didn't hang on to those old things. But adapting somebody else's work is so much easier because you don't have to come up with a story. The hard thing is inventing a new story. And that's what so many writers run into when they run into writer's block. I always tell my students, now writer's block is your friend. Writer's block is your unconscious mind telling you that you don't believe in the thing you just wrote or what you're about to write. You need to make a story change. You're missing some characters that you need to have. There are events that you're missing out. You're giving us the wrong reason for people to do what they're doing. So go back, toss a couple of chapters, start again, start over from the beginning, from a different point of view. Try ways to shake it up so that you can invent more story, because your original outline isn't working for you anymore.
And this is very interesting because you also do workshops, don't you? You do writers' workshops. Right.
And many of the things I do in my writer's workshop, I learned from Algis Budrys from his work with the Writers of the Future workshop. The winners of the contest, the writers who are in the anthology, come to the Writers of the Future Awards week, and during that week they are given a terrific workshop.
Well, let's just introduce this Writers of the Future.
Yeah.
So last year, I had the president of Galaxy Press, which basically is part of the Writers of the Future contest, and they put out the book, which includes all of the winners of the contest, the Writers of the Future contest.
And some additional stories, the quarterly winners, and they select from the quarterly winners and the overall winners the stories that will make the best book. And it's a great book. It's a great anthology. There aren't that many good anthologies around, but it's packed full of writers you've never seen before, and
they're all brand new. They've never been published. That's one of the rules of most of the winners, right? They've never been published before, so basically they get a chance to be published in this contest.
Yeah, but see, this is not amateur hour. This isn't fan writing online. This is real stuff because their standards are high, and the very best writers. I mean, as a writing teacher, I tell my students, the first place you submit your story is the Writers of the Future contest. And if
as long as it's sci-fi and fantasy,
right? It has to be sci-fi or fantasy, and they have to really be new. They have to not be published. But submit it there first because they respond quickly. The judging is excellent. If they don't take it, that doesn't mean it's a bad story. It just means that it didn't work for the contest. And then you submit it to the magazines. And I say that as the publisher of an online science fiction magazine. I just tell them, you just owe it to your career, because the best launch for a writer's career today is the Writers of the Future contest. So many writers who've had good careers began by winning this contest. I'm still annoyed that it didn't exist when I started. So I had a little bit more of a struggle than it's not that their career is completely made, but Galaxy Press cares about these writers. They work with them, help them to follow a career path. But it's not like American Idol, where when you win, you get a recording contract, and that's one of the ways that the show makes money.
Right.
Is that they own you for a while.
Right.
In this case,
they don't do that.
No, Galaxy is not going to be your publisher. They're just going to help you find other publishers. So there's really nothing in it for them financially, except they're really proud of the work they do. It's the best writing contest that has ever operated in any field, any genre. It's completely above board. There's never who you know. There's no ideological bent in this. There's no, you just have to write a really good story. Yeah. And that's what people do.
This is their 31st volume, so they come out with one every year, right? I think.
Yeah.
So this one is this is the 2015 version. It hasn't even been released yet, and it's going to be coming out
in May.
In May.
Yeah.
That's right. And we just had the award ceremony, and you are one of the judges, right? That's amazing.
Well, you've got to realize that the name judges, the well-known writers that they bring in, we don't read 500 submissions. We read only the best of the best, and then select which of those will become the annual winner. Because there are judges working all along the way. Dave Wolverton, and I don't know if Tim Powers is helping with that or not, but I know that David Farland does the overall judging the way that Aldous Budrus used to. And everything that is submitted is read by a real judge, not somebody brought in, like a lot of screenplays are read by somebody doing coverage, an assistant or whatever.
Yeah.
Or a lot of other literary contests, I have to say, they're being screened by people who don't know what they're doing. And so some of the best work gets screened out. That never happens with Writers of the Future, because the real judges who actually know what they're doing are reading all the submissions. And then they select quarterly winners. So no one ever has to wait more than 3 months to find out whether they're won or not. If you didn't win, you go ahead and submit the story somewhere else, and you move on with your career. As long as you're still not selling, you send the next story to Writers of the Future. And eventually, if you win a quarterly contest or even come in second or third in Writers of the Future, you have the encouragement you need to know, okay, I can do this thing. Because you don't win if you're not good.
Right.
It's that simple.
No, that's for sure. And I know they get a ton of submissions. So.
They do, and they should.
Yeah.
Because it's the court of first resort. If you submit to a magazine, you can sometimes. Now, our magazine is pretty good. We do have a fast turnaround.
That's the online magazine?
Yeah, it's Intergalactic Medicine Show,
okay.
IGMS. It's Orson Scott Card's Intergalactic Medicine Show. But if you just look up, my name, Orson Scott Card, Intergalactic Medicine Show is one of the things that pops up on Google. But we're really proud of the magazine. We do good work, and we publish stories that are well worth reading. But I expect that everybody that we publish, that we're their first publishing, that they had already submitted the same story to Writers of the Future and didn't win. So, because that's the way this business should work in the genre. But there are so many good writers coming along. It's hard to find the new ones, The problem with publishing is it's scary. It's not like selling Tide. Every box of Tide contains Tide, And so you're selling soap, and that's great. Every box of Cheer contains Cheer. But every set of book covers has to have something new. And nobody knows which one's going to work. The next year's bestseller is not the book that most resembles this year's bestseller.
I'm sure.
It's, if anybody could uncover the formula, believe me, we would all be writing that book every time because it's so financially remunerative. But you just don't know what's going to be the next hit.
Well, this makes me wonder more about your books, because I know you have written a ton of them. I don't even know the exact number. Do you?
It depends on how you count. If I rewrite a book completely and put it out under a new title, is it a new book?
Yes.
Nah,
I
really.
think so.
Well, we're over 70 anyway. Books.
Okay.
The thing is, keeping count is pointless because Isaac Asimov and Jane Yolen exist. And so I'm never going to I can't live long enough to reach their totals. So, and they wrote wonderful books. So
they were amazing.
I can't go for quantity. All I can do is, and not even sure I can go for quality, all I can do is I can offer the best Orson Scott Card books. That's what I work to do.
Well, you do, and I can tell you there's a number of people I know who would probably faint just by being here in this booth with you.
I know, but I bathe, I try to,
but... But I mean, Ender, like this story, and it's got made into a movie now, and I mean, just growing up, I know so many people who were in love with that whole, saga, and people have been naming their children Ender.
That just scares me. I beg them, please name the child Andrew and then use Ender as a nickname. But no, the name gets used. I did find somebody who wanted to name their child after the lead character in the book Ender's Shadow, but his name is Bean. And that is a terrible name to give a child. Name your dog Bean, but don't name your child. Well, what they did was...
Bean is my oldest daughter's nickname, by the way.
Well, that's fine. A nickname? That's fine. But they named their child Julian Delfici, which by the end of the book, he finds out that's what his birth name was.
His real name
was Julian Delfici. And so they named their child Julian Delfici Smith, or whatever the last name is, and then call him Bean. And that's an honor. As a writer, I'm honored. It's one of those things that writers can't control. Every book that I have published has been the best I could do with a story that I really cared about and believed in. And I think I've written many novels that are much better than Ender's Game since I wrote Ender's Game. But I'm thrilled that people still regard Ender's Game as the book. I'll have people say, "Oh, I love your book." I go, "Which one of the 72?" "I know what they mean. It's going to be Ender's Game." With rare exceptions, that's the one that they care about. I am just lucky to have a book that anybody cares about at all. Because, let's face it, I make this stuff up. I get paid to write really long lies about people that never existed. And yet I expect readers to become emotionally involved, to care. And they do. I mean, every one of my books is somebody's favorite book. It's just that Ender's Game has a lot more people in that category. And I'm just glad. Ender's been very good to me. And my publisher and I both know that if the word Ender is in the title, it's going to sell better than, but we haven't, been naming all my books Ender.
No.
Only if he's actually in it.
How many books are in the whole saga of Ender? Because there's quite a few.
There are. Actually, to me, the real book was Speaker for the Dead. I wrote Ender's Game only to set it up, which is weird. So now the tail wags the dog. But then there's Xenocide and Children of the Mind, and that's the Speaker trilogy. Speaker and the two after that. But those are radically different from Ender's Game. And so people who loved Ender's Game, and they're looking for something that gives something more like that feeling. There's a book called Ender in Exile, which is immediately Ender's life right after Ender's Game. And there is a series of shadow books, Ender's Shadow, Shadow of the Hegemon, Shadow of the Giant, Shadow Puppets. I just gave them out of order so that will confuse anyone. But they follow the other kids from Battle School. So if somebody wants to have more of the experience of Kids in Space, the Shadow series does that. And then we have a series of prequels about the Formic Wars, about the events before Ender's Game. And I'm collaborating with Aaron Johnston, who's a wonderful writer. He wrote the comic books. We started it as a Marvel comic series.
Oh, really?
And so he and I worked out the story together, and then he wrote the comic book scripts. And then when we adapted it to be novels, it seemed natural for him to do the novelization, only I have done a lot of going from short to long. And so I work with him very closely on coming up with how we adapt and expand and grow the story to make the novels.
I saw the Formic Wars was available online, and how many books are in that series?
Well, there are two Formic Wars before the one that Ender's Game is about.
Okay.
And so the first one is 3 volumes, and the second Formic War is 3 volumes. So we're just writing the first volume of the second trilogy now.
Which would be sort of the initial invasion of...
Yes.
Right.
And then there are additional little things along the way. Short story called Mazer in Prison, a Christmas book called The War of Gifts, which takes place in Battle School, has Ender Wiggin in it. And it's, Santa Claus does not come to Battle School, I promise. We try to keep the reality firm, but
Mazer...
But I think the best of the books is and I'm going to blow the title, I'm bad with remembering my own titles, Shadows in Flight, which is about the children of Bean discovering an early Formic colony ship. And it's really my book about fatherhood. It's the first thing I wrote after I had a stroke several years ago.
Oh, wow.
And, you look death in the face, and you start to go, okay, what's my life about? What has it been? Is my life Ender's Game? When that goes out of print, have I died for real this time? Or does something else mean more? And what means more is my kids, my family. And I think that...
How many kids do you have?
We have 3. And that's what matters. Now, that doesn't mean that we always get along, doesn't mean that they are thrilled to have me as a dad, but it does mean that they are wonderful human beings. And so in writing, I didn't mean it this way. I wasn't writing to a theme. I was writing about discovering the ship, and cool stuff happens. But I realized at the end, in fact, somebody else pointed it out to me, that in Shadows in Flight I had written about what it means to be a father. Because it's about Bean, and he's dying, and he sees what his children have become. And they're so not perfect. But it's still kind of a benediction on his role as a father. And so I like that one best of all of the books. But everybody gets to form their own opinions. I would love to have every household in America every household in the world be riven by dissension about which of the Ender books is the best. Let them all argue about that at dinner every day. I would be thrilled.
And don't you also write so many other genres too, not just science fiction?
Well,
but...
it's one of those things. I do have to. I have employees. I have to earn enough money with each book to cover the salaries, and so I get paid a lot more money for writing science fiction and fantasy than if I branch out into other genres. And so every now and then I'll write something that I love that's in a different genre, and my publisher indulges me. Even with science fiction and fantasy, I've written a couple of standalone novels that I think are every bit as good, if not better, but they appeal to a different audience. I mean,
I saw one that you just came out with, I think, that has a woman who's been asleep for 1,000 years or something.
It's Enchantment.
Enchantment,
the book is called Enchantment, and it's Sleeping Beauty wakes up in Russia in 1989. And it's a fantasy. The great witch from Russian folklore, Baba Yaga, comes to current America, modern America, in pursuit of Sleeping Beauty, and then hijacks the 747 and brings it back to medieval Russia, travel in time. And that becomes Baba Yaga's hut on chicken legs that rotates so the door faces whatever direction you want it to. It's the best explanation of Baba Yaga's hut on chicken feet. I mean, aren't all airplanes sitting there on chicken legs? And it's kind of miraculous. And they do rotate. They've changed. So I was thrilled to be able to bring Baba Yaga into the 20th century, 21st century now, but 20th century when I wrote it. So I'm really proud of that novel. I have a book called Magic Street, where magic is brought to life again, revived in the middle of an upper middle class black neighborhood, Baldwin Hills in Los Angeles. The entire cast of characters is black. I wrote it because a black friend of mine was complaining about how nobody writes black male heroes. I said, well, I can't do it. I'm never going to be black. I certainly didn't grow up in black culture, so I will get it wrong. I will do it wrong. He says, no, I'll help you, and he did. Gave me a lot of information that allowed me to, we're human, okay? So I was writing human beings. That part's easy, but getting black culture right was hard. And so Magic Street is definitely not Ender's Game. It's an urban contemporary fantasy, but I was able to work, believe it or not, the main characters, the fairy characters from Midsummer Night's Dream into this novel.
What?
So that, and now Shakespeare's Dark Lady has a completely different meaning, because he knows that Titania is a black woman. I actually wrote the part with Queen Latifah in mind.
Oh, wow.
It's just, I think of it as designed for her. But
that reminds me, so you were a co-producer on the movie Ender's Game, right?
Yeah.
And what sort of role did you play? Are you looking at doing more movies?
I'm working with a film company called Tail Swapper, and we are about to come out with, actually two movies going at once. One is a romantic comedy for the Mormon audience. I'm LDS, and so it's set in Mormon culture, and it's called My One and Only. And we have the script; it's ready to go. And
exciting.
And some of the funding. That's always the great problem. And then working with the filmmakers who did Saints and Soldiers, we have a film that Aaron Johnston is writing the script. He and I are writing the novel, and so we're working on the story development right now. But these guys actually make the movies. They have their funding. And they're terrific. They did Saints and Soldiers.
Fantastic.
And it's called Go Films, is their company. But they're going to be doing it in association with my company, because Aaron and I are doing our end of things. And we're really excited. The film is called Extinct.
Okay.
And it's about human beings who are revived by an alien species. The human species was wiped out.
Whoa.
And so their DNA is extracted from old bones, or at least this is what they're told. And they're being revived because human beings were the last people to fight this group of alien invaders to a standstill for a while. We did the best job. And another alien species now has no idea how to fight them, so they're going to bring humans back to fight the war for them.
Wow.
And so we're really proud of this one. It's a great story premise, I think, and we have some really cool... I've revealed the easiest thing. There's so many cool things happening, and the alien species we have are really alien, so we're happy with them.
I'm like, I'm so amazed how you can come up with all of these ideas. It's just mind-boggling.
But see, that's the thing that I wasn't good at when I was starting out as a playwright, was coming up with stories. So that's what I had to work on, is how to come up with ideas, how to invent along the way. And that's one of the main things I do in my writing courses, is I teach how to write in a coherent point of view, commercial level fiction, so that they have that minimal skill, and
I'll be signing up for that.
Well, how to invent a story and then structure it. Things that are not usually taught in any writing course. I mean, I wish I had a buck for every college writing class that begins with, I don't know really that much about plot, so we're going to work on style. And style is the thing you can't teach. In fact, if you try to teach style, all you will do is kill the natural style of the writer. Everyone has a style. We talk on the phone. People can tell it's us even if we have a cold, because we speak in a certain way. And that style will show up in our fiction whenever we're not trying to consciously control the style of our writing, which should be all the time, because what we should be concentrating on is telling the story as clearly as we can. Let style take care of itself, and then let scholars later talk about your wonderful style, because it'll come. It'll just be there, unless you're fighting it. If there was any book in the world that I could burn, it would be Strunk and White's Elements of Style. It's an evil book. It convinces writers to be paranoid about what they write, to write insufficiently, because, avoid needless words. There are no needless words. We need them all, or they wouldn't exist. It's like illegal immigrant workers. If we didn't need them, there wouldn't be jobs for them here. And so they bless our economy. And what are we complaining about? It's the same thing with Strunk and White. Cut down, trim your prose. Maybe that's good advice for a journalist writing for limited space print publication, but it's terrible advice for a fiction writer, because you need to sprawl. You need to be able to just say everything that comes into your mind and heart. And if you're paying attention to, and most of the rules they teach are just false, just wrong. They don't have anything to do with English. It's wrong.
Well, people should definitely, I think, come and get some advice from you.
Absolutely, they
you are amazing.
Or at least ignore the bad advice you get from everybody else.
Well, I just have to say, we are running out of time, but I would love to keep talking to you for another many hours, but I'll have to end it off pretty soon here. So
I'll be back. Let's pick up where we left off then.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's been amazing.
It's great to see you again.
You too. Thank you for watching author Orson Scott Card on
The Red Booth.